All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we have some great news today. We have some other news as well that I guess may not be as great in comparison, but it's still relatively good, and one of them is fairly questionable. But we for sure have some fantastic news to talk about today. Dan Quinn has made yet another huge hire for this staff, and I could see how some people would probably feel like this is the best hire out of all of them. The Washington Commanders have now hired Anthony Lynn, former head coach, as just a run game coordinator. That's all he's coming here to do. We're going to talk about why that also raises the floor on the Bobby Johnson hire as offensive lines coach. If you were worried about that hire, if you were questioning that like I was, bringing in Anthony Lynn only raises whatever grade I would have given the Bobby Johnson hire. We're going to talk about that and more, especially like how Anthony Lynn, he comes from such a strong coaching background. We're going to break down the stats of run games that he's been coaching for and how productive they've been under him. Some of the great running backs that he's coached up and developed. We're going to do a full breakdown on that. Why Brian Robinson should be super excited. Why Anthony Lynn is the perfect match for a Cliff Kingsbury, who's very pass heavy. You need a guy with a strong voice in the running back in the run game room like an Anthony Lynn, for Cliff Kingsbury to even consider listening to and actually taking into his opinions into account and adding it into the offensive game plan every week and things like that. This is like literally the perfect hire under a Cliff Kingsbury offense. You need somebody with a very strong experienced background like Anthony Lynn to pretty much balance out Cliff Kingsbury. We're going to talk about that. Also, we hired Tom Donatel as our DBs coach, and we have a couple of more updates outside of that as well as a press conference announcement for Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr. when that's happening. I'm going to give y'all that update at the end of the video because, I mean, honestly, right now, I don't even have it off the top of my mind, memory, like exactly when. I know it's tomorrow. I'll give y'all the time by the time we get to that part of my notes because I don't even have it off the top of my head, to be honest with y'all. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Stay tuned for all of the content. Again, I'm keeping y'all updated on every little thing that the Commanders do, small or big. It does not matter. We're talking about it. Fact or rumor, report, whatever, we're talking about it. But of course, I cannot wait to get all of these coaching hires out the way. I believe we only have 2 more hires to announce, and then we are done with this whole coaching staff thing, and then we can completely focus on free agency and draft, which y'all know me, man. That's my favorite part of the off season, and arguably my favorite part of the entire season. Even when it comes to the regular season, yeah, it's great. I love watching the chess pieces move on the you know the little electric football. I don't know how old a lot of y'all are, but the little thing where you turned it on and the players would move. Like, I love that part's fun too, but putting the pieces in the right place, team building, that's my favorite part. I'm a GM at heart way more than I am like a coach or a player, and so I'm just super excited to move on to that, and we're almost there. We're almost there. We only have a couple of more hires to go, and then we're moving on to my favorite part of the NFL season. Draft, free agency, combine is soon. Pro days are soon. Free agency is not far away as well. Can't wait. Let's go ahead and get to it, man. Let's get it. Like I said in my other video, man, it's nice to see that the national media even feels like we're making big moves. And that's exactly what Adam Schefter said. A big move for Washington. Commanders are hiring 49ers assistant head coach Anthony Lynn as their run game coordinator, per league source. Commanders made a run at Lynn last year, but get him this year. That's also a really notable thing, too. We tried to hire him last year as at a higher position than what he's currently getting this year. And he didn't want to come here for the promotion compared to what he's getting to now last year with Ron Rivera and company, but with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters and these guys, he's willing to take a lesser role than what we tried to offer him last year, which is really crazy. Here's one reason why. Lynn is close with head coach Dan Quinn and GM Adam Peters, and that's coming from Adam Schefter himself. We're gonna dive into that in this video, how those connections matter. But there you go. Anthony Lynn just wants to be a part of this great staff that we're building. It continues the theme that we're getting guys that are usually doing bigger things for other teams coming here willing to take lesser roles, lesser titles, less power, just to be a part of what we're building here. I'm telling y'all, this Anthony Lynn one, if you weren't convinced before, you should be convinced now. Remember, he interviewed for the offensive coordinator job here last year and didn't take that. He wasn't willing to do that. Now, of course, also, we probably would lean in more so towards Eric Bieniemy anyway. But Anthony Lynn, man, this is a guy that has been an offensive coordinator. He's been a head coach, and he's coming here just to be a run game coordinator. That's it, man. And those connections are coming through. And that Dan Quinn has the ability to put together the best staff out of all of the top head coaching candidates is not only living up to the hype, but it's exceeding it. Because again, not to repeat myself too much, not to dive too deep into it again, I've talked about it in several videos, but Dan Quinn's connections and relationships around the NFL are definitely being used to his advantage right now. He even stole Larry Izzo from Mike McDonald, and he didn't even have to promote him to do it. Larry Izzo went from the special teams coordinator with the Seahawks with Mike McDonald coming in to special teams coordinator for the Commanders. No promotion, no increase in power or anything like that. Just literally preferred to be the same thing for Dan Quinn rather than that from Mike McDonald. I'm telling y'all, man, we're building something special here. And Larry Izzo isn't the only one of that. That's just the one I want to point out because, again, I've already done deep dives into this into several other videos. I don't want to just keep repeating myself. I'll repeat like little things here and there, but I don't want to go on a whole nother 10-15 minute monologue about something I've already talked about in previous videos. I'm pretty sure most of y'all are not here for that, so we're going to keep it pushing. Again, this is a guy that's a former head coach and offensive coordinator coming over to Washington just to basically be Cliff Kingsbury's top offensive assistant, his right-hand man, basically. And remember, we were hoping that Adam Peters would bring at least one coach with him from the 49ers, and we were looking at guys like a Clint Kubiak. I never imagined that it would be a guy like an Anthony Lynn, especially after we already hired Cliff Kingsbury as offensive coordinator. I was looking like there's no way that, I mean, when you're looking at the 49ers staff and trying to figure out who we could potentially take from there, Clint Kubiak ended up getting a job elsewhere as an offensive coordinator. I was looking at, you know, maybe the tight ends coach, maybe. I completely ignored Anthony Lynn's existence on that coaching staff because I'm like, there's no way we could bring him over here for anything less than offensive coordinator, and we already hired him as that. I mean, it will probably even take offering him a head coaching job to pull him away from that great situation he has under Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers just going to the Super Bowl even though they lost it. For him to leave that situation, you must be offering him a huge promotion, and we're not even doing that. And he still wants to be a part of this coaching staff. And Anthony Lynn has a longer history with the Kyle Shanahans than most people probably remember, because not only did he coach under Kyle Shanahan most recently for the past couple of years, but he also played for Mike Shanahan as well. Those connections run deep right there. So if you wanted a guy from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, there you go. Because this guy not only comes from Kyle Shanahan, but he was also coached by Mike Shanahan as well. He's as Shanahan as you can basically get, which I'm very excited about. Hopefully some of that greatness rubbed off on Anthony Lynn. He's already a great coach in my opinion, especially when you look at it from certain views. We're going to look at a lot of the stats, especially like the run game side of things. When he's been over the control of a run game, how great is that run game been? We're going to take a look at those stats. But again, he's already great himself, but also being under Kyle Shanahan for the past couple of years, if anything, potentially only made him better. And hopefully he'll bring some of that Kyle Shanahan secret sauce over here with him, on top of, again, the greatness that he already has just by himself, isolating him separate from everything else on the outside. And also, we were hoping that the Commanders were waiting for the Super Bowl to finish to take somebody from one of those staffs, and there you go. That's two birds, one stone. We were hoping to pull somebody from the 49ers staff, for Adam Peters to bring somebody with him. And then, of course, even if the 49ers weren't in the Super Bowl, when you're watching the Super Bowl and you're thinking about how both of those teams got to the Super Bowl, you're like, man, if we could just get somebody from one of those staffs to come bring some of that winning over here to the Commanders, we would be great. And again, that's two birds, one stone in Anthony Lynn. Kind of three birds, one stone, because again, this is another hire where somebody could easily get a promotion elsewhere and is willing to take a lesser role to come be a part of this organization. Super excited. Again, this is a guy that gets head coach considerations and hiring cycles. And he's not only coming here to not be a head coach, but not even the offensive coordinator, just the run game coordinator. And so now that's 2 former head coaches on Dan Quinn's coaching staff, Anthony Lynn from the Chargers and Cliff Kingsbury from the Cardinals. And both of those guys are just working on the offense alone. I am super excited. And if you're talking about experience in the film room, if we're talking about guys that like whatever could happen, we have 3 guys that can call plays for us if we need to. Now, Brian Johnson wasn't necessarily the best play caller for the Eagles last year, but at the same time, they were 7th in points and 8th in yards. So now you have Cliff Kingsbury, Anthony Lynn, and Brian Johnson, who all have play calling experience all in one offensive room right now. I know Cliff Kingsbury is technically running the show. Brian Johnson will help as the passing game coordinator. Anthony Lynn's going to be the run game coordinator. And Anthony Lynn probably ranks above Brian Johnson just very slightly. But either way, we have 3 guys that have play calling experience that can call plays. All of them are in just one staff, and Cliff Kingsbury is more than likely going to be the one calling the plays. But that extra input, that extra experience and expertise, I'm telling y'all, man, it's invaluable, man. You can't really even put a price on what we're putting together right now. And the Commanders' offensive staff consists of now 2 former head coaches and a guy who interviewed for head coaching jobs this cycle. And Grant Paulson brings up a great point. When we're talking about us having 3 guys that can call plays and 3 guys that have all already called plays before, I don't know if another team can claim that they have an offensive coaching staff with 3 guys who have called plays before all in one coaching staff. I'm not about to sit here and dive into all 32 teams' coaching staffs right now, but we are probably the only team that can say that we have something like that. And Grant Paulson goes on to say, you can quibble over results and philosophy stuff with each, but you can't argue with their experience and qualifications for the roles that they took. I completely agree. Also, this staff is just night and day compared to last year's. Light years ahead, man. I can't remember the last time we had a staff this great on paper. I want to emphasize on paper, but still, man, I can't remember, man. I mean, we're putting together this all-star cast of guys, but at the same time, even though this coaching staff does look crazy, I want to emphasize again on paper, because like I mentioned before in another video, people were very high on the Panthers coaching staff that they assembled last hiring cycle, but they couldn't actually mesh together and get any chemistry going with each other, and it ultimately failed. But in my opinion, I feel like it was more of like a David Tepper problem, being their owner, meddling and all of that type of stuff. He's pretty much like the worst owner in the NFL now that Dan Snyder's gone. And you could also argue that they chose wrong quarterback, which also led to that not working out at the end of the day. But in comparison to the Panthers, we have Josh Harris instead of David Tepper. And also we have Adam Peters versus anybody that they could potentially have as a GM. Whoever they had last year and who they just promoted the GM from assistant GM this season, neither of those guys are Adam Peters. And I'm also very confident in Dan Quinn as well. So I'm super excited. I don't think we'll make the same mistakes as the Carolina Panthers. Because also I feel like if at anything, even ignoring the difference in going from David Tepper to Josh Harris or the Panthers GMs from last year and this year compared to Adam Peters, I just feel like we're going to have the foresight to see what went wrong with the Carolina Panthers and avoid doing that just simply because we refuse to allow history to repeat itself. But then on top of all of that, I'm very high on all of these individuals that we're bringing in here, so I'm super excited. But back to Anthony Lynn, because this is technically an Anthony Lynn video, but I just wanted to talk about how excited I am about the future of this franchise because of the moves that Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and Josh Harris are making right now. But we got to talk about the man of the hour, Dan Quinn. And shouts out to David Harrison for bringing this up. Shouts out to him on Twitter. This was a position previously held by Coach Juan Castillo under Ron Rivera and Eric Bieniemy. Can't imagine Washington is bringing in Anthony Lynn to coordinate a run game they don't plan on using. Shouts out to David Harrison for that, because that's a great point right there. Remember, we brought in Juan Castillo. Well, he was already here before Eric Bieniemy got here, but he got promoted to run game coordinator, and it's reported that like he wanted to do certain things and Eric Bieniemy was like, nah, I'm good, and basically just not necessarily ignored the requests and the opinions of a Juan Castillo, but was like, I'm gonna do my own thing basically. And like, yeah, Juan Castillo, you're the run game coordinator, but I'm running this run game as an Eric Bieniemy, and I don't think you're bringing in Anthony Lynn to be ignored by Cliff Kingsbury. I just highly doubt it, man. Because you could argue that with as much experience as he has, he may be brought here to be the running backs coach as well. Now, we may still more than likely hire a guy separately for that role, like a whole nother human being to fill the running backs coach role. But Anthony Lynn could be the run game coordinator and the running backs coach if you want him to be. Easily could be. But also, Anthony Lynn was in LA when the Chargers drafted and began developing Justin Herbert at the top of the draft. That experience will pair nicely with Cliff Kingsbury and Brian Johnson, both of whom have been responsible for helping develop young star quarterbacks as well. Shouts out to Grant Paulson for that. That's a great point. That Anthony Lynn also has experience, even though he's more of a run game guy, more of a run game coordinator, he has a great experience of developing a young, very talented rookie quarterback when he was the head coach for the Chargers. Herbert even said after his rookie season when he won offensive rookie of the year, he said, quote, Coach Lynn's been awesome. Him and I, we've really gotten close over these past couple of months. He's always out in the field, and whether he's helping the running backs, the offensive line, the quarterbacks, he's been doing a great job of stepping into our meetings and telling us exactly what he wants and how he wants it done. He's a leader, and this team follows him, and I really believe in him, unquote. And those are the exact thoughts you want coming from a rookie, just drafted quarterback that just won offensive rookie of the year, that looks like an elite quarterback, a guy that a lot of people were looking at as traits he had to be developed into a star quarterback. Those are the exact remarks you want to hear from that guy, because that could be how a Jayden Daniels or a Drake May, or highly doubted, but a Caleb Williams could feel about an Anthony Lynn being in the room. Whichever quarterback we end up taking in this draft, because I'm, again, 90-something% sure we're going to take a quarterback early in this draft, more than likely with the number 2 overall pick. I love the fact that Anthony Lynn is there as another voice and opinion, because Justin Herbert highly valued this guy's opinion and his effect on the team, his leadership, and his ability to convey exactly what he wanted, how he wanted it done, and things like that. And that's just another potential positive and help in that room for that person. So whoever we end up drafting, I'm very optimistic about them being developed the right way, because we have so many guys that have done it before. You have Brian Johnson on the Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts side. You have Cliff Kingsbury with the only good season that we saw of Johnny Manziel. He had everybody fooled about Johnny Manziel, and it was more so him than Johnny Manziel. But Kyler Murray, Pat Mahomes, and then you're coming in here with Anthony Lynn with Justin Herbert. Come on, man. The pedigree of quarterback development we have in this room right now is spectacular. And not only are we going all in on quarterback development, but we're also going all in on specifically bringing in guys with experience, drafting a top quarterback in the draft, and getting him going immediately. Don't forget that Kyler Murray won Offensive Rookie of the Year his rookie season under Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach. And again, Justin Herbert did the same thing under Anthony Lynn. So if you want a guy that can come in and get a quarterback to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, which means they're productive immediately. I want to emphasize immediately. This is not like a development project where it takes a quarterback like 2 to 3 years. If you want your best shot of having like a CJ Stroud situation, 2nd overall pick to playoffs, being led by your star quarterback, your star rookie quarterback, assembling this staff of Brian Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury, and Anthony Lynn is probably the best you could probably do, just on quarterback development alone. We'll see about play calling, we'll see about the scheme, we'll see about X's and O's, but quarterback development, specifically a top of the draft quarterback that you want to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, you can't do much better than what we got. You can have whatever doubts about this coaching staff you want, but at the very least, we have an enormous amount of experience and adaptability. We have young quarterback development as well, and this defensive staff is just elite, plain and simple. Argue with somebody else, especially in the 2nd and 3rd levels, linebacker and DBs coach-wise. But it has the potential to be elite on the defensive line as well, based on who they hire as the defensive lines coach, because we already have a high-ceiling assistant defensive lines coach in Sharif Lloyd that we hired yesterday. We already have Ryan Kerrigan, who I love. I'm so happy he's sticking around as the outside linebackers coach / pass rush specialist. That's all he's doing. Every day he wakes up, how can I help these defensive linemen get better at rushing the passer? And that's the thing he was best at. He was never like a freak athlete. He was just very technically sound, and that's how he had so much success for the Redskins when he was here. So I love that. And if they bring in a great defensive lines coach, this defensive line staff, top to bottom, elite. Arguably one of the best in the NFL. Of course, like I keep saying, though, we got to see them put it all together. Like the Carolina Panthers comparison I brought up earlier, these guys have been great elsewhere, and they've done great things for other places. who's to say that they don't all come here and for some reason it just all the wheels fall off for any reason? I'm very optimistic that that won't happen, but at the end of the day, we still got to go out there and see what these guys do together. Chemistry, communication, our responsibilities clear, our roles clear, all of that type of stuff. And I'm telling you right now, the player that's probably the most happy about this hire is Brian Johnson Jr., man, our running back. He has to be even far more excited than we are as a fan base to get Anthony Lynn. He's about to eat this year with Anthony Lynn being involved in the offense, man, because it's one thing to hire a good run game coordinator, but it's another when you get an Anthony Lynn whose voice will be heard in Cliff Kingsbury offense, like I briefly mentioned earlier, like I foreshadowed earlier, when it comes to like Cliff Kingsbury's offense and his weekly game planning and what we're going to do. And Anthony Lynn is a voice that will be heard, like a voice that carries weight. I think bringing in a strong leader and a guy that commands attention with a proven background of getting results is a perfect match for the pass-happy Cliff Kingsbury. I think the run game coordinator had to be somebody that Cliff Kingsbury would actually really listen to, because that should create balance. Just like with Joe Witt Jr. as our defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn is our head coach. Dan Quinn is the passionate guy. You know, Dan Quinn, he said that he's going to let Joe Witt Jr. run the entire defense, but he still may have a little bit of input here and there. Dan Quinn is the passionate guy, the fiery guy, the emotional guy, the guy that people want to run through a wall to play for and things like that. Joe Witt Jr. is the logical, calm thinker, the X's and O's, the guy that's thinking ahead to the next move, the chess player type of guy. Perfect match there. Same thing with this Cliff Kingsbury and Anthony Lynn marriage that we have going on, where Cliff Kingsbury's super pass heavy. I mean, you can say whatever you want about Cliff Kingsbury, but as far as scheming up a passing attack, he's elite at that. We could talk about him as a head coach, as a talent evaluator, as a guy that can balance pass with run. And even though I felt like that was pretty underrated, but one thing you can't take away from him is ability to scheme up pass concepts and to be elite and explosive at drawing up passing game offenses. Anthony Lynn coming in as the run game coordinator is perfect, man. I mean, that is two ex-head coaches going hand in hand, right-hand man, Batman, Robin right now. I'm super excited, man. You can't do much better than that. Dan Quinn is killing it. And how good Anthony Lynn has actually been at getting a run game going is a good question. And of course, there's a lot of factors involved. We can't give him all of the blame when it's been bad for him. And we also can't give him all of the credit when it all goes well for him. But 2015, he had the 5th EPA per play rushing attack with Buffalo. 2016, he was 1st with Buffalo. 2017, he was 9th with the Chargers. 2018, he was 5th with the Chargers. And then 2019, he was 18th with the Chargers. And then 2020, 28th with the Chargers. Terrible. Then he went to Detroit for 1 year, was 24th. Then he immediately went to San Francisco. And in 2022, he was 11th. And then 2023, this past season, he was 1st. And I also feel like it's noteworthy that when he, other than the Detroit Lions, my fault, 2015 he was 5th, and then the next year, after he had a year under his belt going into the second season, he improved to 1st. And same thing with the Chargers. At first he got there, he was 9th, so those are immediate results there as well, but then he improved going into his second season. Now the 3rd and 4th season, bad. But you can see that first season, at the very least, he comes in and your run game is immediately at worst top 10. And then the second season, there's huge improvement. Same thing going to the 49ers. Now, they were right outside the top 10 his first season being there at 11th, but immediate improvement ensued in that second season with them going from 11th to 1st. That's a pattern. With Buffalo, with the Chargers, and San Francisco 49ers, 3 different places where he's been in charge of the run game. He's a guy that comes in and gets immediate results that first year, and at the very least is going to be better than anything the Commanders have had for a long time. But most importantly, that second year, they take a huge leap forward into being one of the best run games in the NFL. So I'm very excited about that. Hopefully we can at least keep him here for 2 years to do just that, and nobody steals him from our coaching staff. Let him get that second year off. So then the question becomes, are we getting 2015 to 2018 and 2023 Anthony Lynn, or are we getting 2019 to 2021 Anthony Lynn? He did a fantastic job though with Melvin Gordon for the Chargers, but then he didn't do so well with Austin Eckler, which is pretty weird. But then he did a great job with a lot of the 49ers running backs. Even though Christian McCaffrey is different no matter who's coaching him, you can give Anthony Lynn some credit, at the very least, for the other guys like Elijah Mitchell when they were healthy. And you can also give him some credit for Christian McCaffrey's elite ceiling, like the fact that Christian McCaffrey is already a great player in his own, but I will argue that Anthony Lynn rose his ceiling. Because last year when Anthony Lynn was the 49ers run game coordinator, San Francisco finished 8th in rushing attempts, 3rd in rushing yards, and 1st in rushing yard touchdowns, and the Niners averaged 4.8 yards per carry. That's not just Christian McCaffrey's greatness, but Christian McCaffrey finished the year with 2,000 plus yards from scrimmage and 21 total touchdowns, man. I'm super excited. Again, Christian McCaffrey's a great talent on his own, but I could say that Anthony Lynn did a great job of raising his ceiling. I would definitely argue that. Also, one thing, no matter what you want to say about Anthony Lynn, one thing you can't say is that he doesn't have loads of experience coordinating the run game. Again, going all the way back to 2015, all the way through to 2013, being an offensive coordinator, head coach, or a run game coordinator. He's been doing his thing, man. I don't care what y'all say. Also, I do want to point out, shouts out to Mark Bullock for this one, Lynn has worked under Kyle Shanahan and Greg Roman, two coaches that are excellent in designing rushing attacks, but both major in different schemes. So this is going to be really interesting to see what Anthony Lynn brings. Is he going to bring elements of a Greg Roman offense or elements of a Kyle Shanahan offense and combine them? Really interesting, with him being a run game coordinator and designing run games under both of those coaching schemes and coaching trees. It's going to be interesting to see what he does under his own volition. Is he going to combine them and basically make, like, bring the best of both worlds with them? We'll see. Also, it's been confirmed that Anthony Lynn will not have an assistant head coach title like he did in San Francisco, which is crazy. He technically took a demotion to leave the 49ers that were just in the Super Bowl to come here for the Washington Commanders. If you're not convinced yet, if you don't see the vision yet, I don't know what to tell you. He had that title in Buffalo and San Francisco in the years before and after the 4 years when he was a head coach of the Chargers. So typically when he is somewhere coaching, he has assistant head coach as his title. He probably demands that. Like, him and his agent are like, I need assistant head coach if I'm gonna come here. He's not even getting that here, which is crazy. He had that with the 49ers. He doesn't have that here. He's literally taking a demotion to come here rather than just staying with the 49ers, what he was already doing, coaching up Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, being under Kyle Shanahan, coaching a team that was just for the Super Bowl. He left that to take a demotion to come here. Shouts out to my boy Mike Hall at the Burgundy Zone as well for this one. Make sure you follow him. Great follow. Follow their YouTube. Watch all of this stuff, man. Quinn literally came in this offseason and said, let's do the complete opposite of everything Ron Rivera did the last 4 seasons. I completely agree there, man. I'm super excited. A lot of people that were saying that Dan Quinn is Ron Rivera 2.0. You couldn't be more wrong. The only thing they have in common is they're both defensive-minded leaders, things like that, like the CEO type of head coach, where they galvanize the troops and things. That's it. That's literally where the comparisons stop, right there. I mean, Dan Quinn is doing something I've never seen the Burgundy and Gold do in my lifetime. I mean, he's hiring guys that are overqualified for the positions that they're being hired for, left and right. I love the fact that it's a funny word, but these guys literally are overqualified for the roles that they're taking on this team, which shows that they truly believe in the vision that Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and Josh Harris are selling them, and I'm expecting it to go crazy. I mean, we have all overqualifications all over the place on this staff, and I'm excited to see how it's going to play out. And again, going back to my point, my comparison to the Panthers, is it too many chefs in the kitchen like Carolina, or is this just simply the Avengers and we're actually putting together the best staff of all time, at least under Burgundy and Gold standards? I'm excited to see. Shouts out to Mark Bullock for this one as well. Lots of different coaches with an array of backgrounds. If they all get on the same page, it could be great, but we're going to need some strong leadership to ensure that the wires don't get crossed, unquote. And that's all on Dan Quinn. Dan, we're looking at you. Can you put it all together? The reason that he allowed Joe Witt Jr. to take over defensive play calling duties and to pretty much take over the defense totally, just all around, is because he said that he wants to be the glue that holds all of this stuff together, and he wants to focus on making sure all of this works out. Everybody has chemistry, roles are defined, responsibilities are specific, and all of that type of stuff. So with him just completely delegating all defensive responsibilities to Joe Witt Jr. so that he can focus on this type of thing, I'm very excited about the fact that he can do it. He said he's already learned his lesson from his previous head coaching opportunity with the Falcons. He's coming here to basically do it the right way, and I believe him when he says that, man. I really do. And also, man, when we're talking about all of these overqualified coaches coming here to take lesser roles than what they should honestly be taking, and they should go elsewhere to be, if I'm their agent, if I'm even their family or friends, I'm like, man, why don't you go there to be this rather than taking a demotion to come for the Commanders? With that going on right now, what is the budget for this Commanders coaching staff? And this takes me back to what I was saying months ago about Josh Harris, is that he will not be cheap. Whatever it takes for the Washington Commanders to be built the right way and for us to become a successful, consistent Super Bowl contending franchise, Josh Harris is not going to be skimpy or stingy with the money. He's going to do whatever it takes. He's going to be willing to pay whatever money it takes to bring in the best people possible to do whatever we need to be done. Again, I kept bringing up the fact that he was bringing guys in for titles that most other NFL franchises don't even have on their team. Like Tim McGrath is an injury consultant. He's not even like the head athletic strength. He's just being brought here, paid here just to be the injury consultant. Like Josh Harris is like, if you can help my Commanders become a better organization and help them potentially win more games in any way possible, even if it's a very small difference in margin that you're helping, we're gonna give you some money. We're gonna throw the bag at you. Just please come and do what you're elite at. Just do that. Just only focus on that. I'm willing to pay whatever it takes, type of thing. And that has me very excited. And I told y'all about that months ago, and now you're starting to see it coming to fruition. I think it's a mixture of Adam Peters and how highly respected and loved he is around the NFL. I think it's Josh Harris also being very likable so far with this early start in the NFL, and also his willingness to just spend whatever money it takes to get whatever needs to be done. And I think Dan Quinn's name, relationships, and connections around the NFL, I feel like all of those are combining to produce this staff that you're seeing right now, and I'm super excited, man. Also, you couldn't go a whole video without a Resh Manuel fun fact and a really random crazy connection from the background. And so, again, if you're not following Resh Manuel, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why you're missing out, but he tweeted out new Commanders run game coordinator Anthony Lynn was on the Cowboy staff with Freddie Kitchens, UNC run game coordinator for Drake May this past season at UNC, and on the Jaguar staff under Jack Del Rio, and with wide receiver Cortez Hankton, who is now the passing game coordinator for LSU's Jayden Daniels. So you have connections to Jack Del Rio, but most importantly, you have connections to both Drake May and Jayden Daniels right now. So there are connections all over the place when it comes to us being able to do homework on these guys behind the scenes, even beyond just a simple like surface phone call that every team that's considering potentially drafting Jayden Daniels or Drake May is going to do. We have a little bit more in-depth insider information and guys that we can go to personally from prior relationships and connections that we can truly get the inside scoop on who these guys are. What are their film study habits? What is their work ethic? What type of leaders are they in the locker room? Are they vocal? How serious are they about getting better? How coachable are they? Do they take well to coaching? Do they listen to your advice and actually go and apply it as often as, like, all of that background people stuff? We can get to know the ins and outs of these guys like Jayden Daniels and Drake May because of the connections we have, the guys very close to them that are around them every day. I'm super excited. Now moving on to less exciting hire, honestly a little bit questionable. The Commanders are hiring Tom Donatel as their DBs coach per source. Donatel was promoted to defensive passing game coordinator / secondaries coach by the Chargers in 2023. So we are getting a guy that just got a promotion last year, and he's taking a demotion to come here. So by logic and by theme that just keeps coming and coming back, you would naturally love this hire. And he does join Jason Simmons, who will have a significant voice as a defensive passing game coordinator. But I don't know, man. I'm not sure about this hire. But of course, we're going to talk about it very soon. I'm giving this organization the benefit of the doubt with every hire that we make, even the Bobby Johnson one. But Tom Donatello is 34 years old. He started with the Seahawks and spent the last 3 seasons with the Chargers. His dad, Ed Donatel, coached in the NFL for 32 years. So he comes from a very coaching heavy background. It's in his blood. This is what he does. And most importantly, it was reported that Jason Simmons would be the secondaries coach along with being the defensive passing game coordinator, and Washington is now hiring Tom Donatel as the DBs coach, and Simmons will be working closely with the 34-year-old former Chargers assistant DBs coach. So I'm super excited about that. The more Jason Simmons, the better. That's really good. Hopefully some of that Jason Simmons genius rubs off on Tom Donatel, because he was the DBs coach for arguably one of the worst passing defenses in the NFL last year. Just like Bobby Johnson with the Giants O-line last year, you have Tom Donatel with the Chargers DBs group last year. Last year, we ranked dead last, but the Chargers weren't much better at 29th in passing yards allowed per game in 2023. But what scares me the most is that they had a lot of talent in that secondary, and they were still bad. So this is very similar, again, to the Bobby Johnson hiring as offensive lines coach. Again, I'm for sure giving this franchise the benefit of the doubt until they don't deserve it anymore, and I hope we never reach that point. But you have to question the hiring of two guys that basically did less with more last year. The Giants O-line and the Chargers secondary had more talent than the Commanders last year at both position groups, and both of those coaches still did not get good results. So these are definitely two of our most questionable hires, but we'll see, because again, I'm giving Adam Peters and the gang the benefit of the doubt because some of these other hires have been straight home runs, and I'm assuming that the same people that were able to pull those off must see something great in those two questionable hires that I'm just not seeing it yet. And at worst, Jason Simmons, again, just to bring this back up, will have more power over Tim Donatel, and Jason Simmons also has a really good resume of developing defensive backs, so I'm sure we're in good hands regardless. Anthony Lynn, like I mentioned earlier, only helps and improves that Bobby Johnson hire to make it more likable, and Jason Simmons being here only helps improve and makes the Tom Donatel hire. So I'm, either way, I'm really excited. I'm already giving this coaching staff the benefit of the doubt, but even outside of giving this coaching staff the benefit of the doubt, Anthony Lynn being around Bobby Johnson will help, and Jason Simmons being around Tom Donatel will help. So I'm thinking that Anthony Lynn definitely raises the floor for a Bobby Johnson. I mean, we can only be so bad on the offensive line when Anthony Lynn is in your offensive coaching staff. And again, the same thing goes for Jason Simmons helping out the DB group, along with Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn, who are also great at developing DBs as well. So we're in good hands there. I definitely feel like Anthony Lynn raises the floor of a Bobby Johnson. We can only be so bad with an Anthony Lynn in the room, and the same thing goes for Jason Simmons with Tom Donatel. So Tom Donatel and Bobby Johnson as well, I'm rooting for y'all, but do I have my questions? And then also I want to point out the fact that when Bobby Ingram was announced that we were keeping him as our wide receivers coach, Jahan Dotson put up prayer hands on Twitter, which is very interesting because it's looking like, by the fact that also, of course, simply just by the fact that we retained Bobby Ingram as our wide receivers coach, but on top of that, Jahan Dotson is very happy about us keeping him, that it wasn't Bobby Ingram's fault last year that our receiving group had a down year last year. It looks like Dan Quinn, Josh Harris, Cliff Kingsbury, and Adam Peters and all of these guys are more so looking at it from the standpoint that it was more so on Eric Bieniemy, the offensive line not being able to protect, or Sam Howell, not Bobby Ingram's fault. And again, the fact that Jahan Dotson, a wide receiver, is happy about Bobby Ingram staying as the wide receivers coach tells you everything you need to know. And that makes me a little bit more optimistic than I was about the Bobby Ingram hiring, even more than I already was. And also now when we're taking a look at the coaching staff, the only positions we don't have yet are defensive lines coach and running backs coach right now. And again, Anthony Lynn could easily be the run game coordinator and running backs coach at the same time. I would be perfectly fine with that. But again, Dan Quinn is trying to bring together the Avengers. So he's probably going to bring in some overqualified running backs coach and some overqualified defensive lines coach. A defensive lines coach that was probably a defensive coordinator at some time, and a running backs coach that was probably an offensive coordinator at some time, or maybe even a head coach before. The way that this whole thing has been going. So as of right now, we only have two positions not filled. Everything else is filled. And again, even just having a pass rush specialist from Ryan Kerrigan goes back to my point about Josh Harris creating roles and titles that not every coaching staff has. I don't believe we had a pass rush specialist here last year, but Josh Harris, Dan Quinn, and Adam Peters, between those three, they're like, hey man, why not? If it could help our defensive linemen be even just slightly better, having a coach that focuses specifically on that only every day, every night, every waking hour that he's being a coach, that's the only thing he's worried about, improving and developing in these defensive linemen. And if it helps us in any little way, then go do it. I love the way this coaching staff is being built, not only by the fact that we have so many stars on the staff, but also the fact that we're not overlooking any detail. If you can help the Commanders be better in any way possible, no matter how small, please come here and do that for us. We'll pay you. I love the message that Josh Harris is sending right now with the way that he's building this organization off rip. Also, before we get up out of here, the team has announced that Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr. will speak to the media tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. And you know I'm going to be there to reply. I may even do a live stream to react live to what's going on. And then I may do a video breaking down all of the most notable quotes that they said in that press conference as well. I'm super excited. Stay tuned for that. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Sorry if I was repeating myself quite a bit in this video, but I'm just super excited. I may have been all over the place. Maybe my thoughts weren't as organized as normal, but I don't think y'all understand how big this Anthony Lynn hire is. I already felt like we've already made a couple of home run hires and a few great hires on top of that, but you could argue bringing Anthony Lynn in just purely as a run game coordinator and him taking a slight demotion to leave the Super Bowl losing 49ers to come here says everything. I don't know what to tell you, man. I've been trying to tell y'all for weeks, for months, how this was going to go, and they've even exceeded my expectations and hopes for what was going to go down. Let me know, though, if you're not excited about the Anthony Lynn hire, let me know why not, all of that type of stuff. Let me know if you are as excited as I am. Bring up any stats that you may have that I may have overlooked or anything like that. Any opinions. If you agree or disagree with me, let me know either way, why and why not, all of that type of stuff. Because again, even if you disagree, if you bring up a great point and it changes my mind even better, my whole goal of starting my YouTube channel was to become a smarter fan. And I'm not going to be 100% right. So I'm not going to be right all the time. So if you bring up a point that, hey man, it completely goes against everything I said, but you're right, hey man, thank you. So yeah, man, make sure y'all stay tuned. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything. Again, I may just set aside some time, maybe tonight, to just sit down and reply to comments going back to videos since a couple of weeks ago, because I've been slipping on that. I've just been super busy. So stay tuned. I can't wait. I'm trying to read and reply to as many comments as possible. Stay tuned for all of the content. Mock drafts on the way. Again, once we're done with all of the coaching staff hires and we get all of those out of the way, it's time to start focusing on free agency especially, but also we can start moving on to the draft, because I haven't even really done any Senior Bowl coverage or anything like that. So stay tuned for all of that. Film sessions for a lot of the draft prospects, all of that type of stuff. I need to do like a Commanders biggest needs video type of thing, and then from there we're going to start to take a look at like my top 5 players at every position group in this draft for each position of need that we have, and what round we could potentially get each guy, kind of stuff like that. I'm super excited about the content I plan for y'all. Just stay tuned, and without further ado, I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.